I do
generally.
Here we go.
Most of the time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh, man, we have another great show for you. Outstanding book, Unblock, by Jurriaan Kamer, the Clear the Way for Results and Develop a Thriving Organization. By the way, so good. He has a little third title that says A Practical Guide for Leaders. It is a toolkit. Folks, it is an absolute toolkit for you and your business. I'm telling you, I've read this. It's like 6 books in one. How do I phrase that? It really is.
Yeah.
He's laughing, but these 6 elements that he covers here really could be a book on their own. And he's managed to be able to give you examples, practical guidance, literally things that you can take home to do in any one of these elements: strategy, steering, ownership, meetings, teamwork, decision-making. I think I've hit them all. And anyway, he's done all the work. It's so good. I really, really like it. And occasionally he throws in a picture or two for those of us who need a picture in there. He does that as well, and some diagrams, and so it's really, really good. We're going to get to him in just a second. But before we do that, let's we do every week, right? We're 4-part people. We're physical, mental, emotional people. Fact of the matter is, if we're not growing, we're dying. Here's what we do. We ask you to check in every week, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, it just doesn't get any worse. 10, it just doesn't get any better. And so what we want you to do is, like, for instance, your physical area of your life. How would you rate yourself when it comes to getting enough exercise, eating right, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water? 5 being average. Now, listen, if you're a 2 today, don't be alarmed. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that, you know what? It's just that you need to do some work. So we're not going to beat ourselves up. I'm a 2. And we're not going to try to get from a 2 to a 10. What we're going to try to do is just try to get from a 2 to 2.5. So what can you do immediately to get yourself to a 2.5, right? Get your hand out of the bag of chips. Stop drinking the soda, right? Whatever it may be. You could do something to move yourself up a level. So that's your first number. Second number is your mental, intellectual number. Fact of the matter is, folks, I did not sit on this book, Unblock, and somehow magically absorb the contents of this book. I had to be an active participant in reading this book in order to gain knowledge and understanding and wisdom that has been supplied by this book called Unblock. You have to be an active participant in your mental growth and your intellectual growth. And we need to grow wisdom in our business and our understanding of ourselves and others, right? It doesn't happen by just sitting on it. You have to do something about it. And there's a variety of ways you can do that. Reading a book. And I tell my coaching clients, I say, listen to a book is fine. But when you get out of the car, write down one thing you're going to take action on. One thing. Right? I love listening to books too. But when I'm done listening, I'm going to take an action on something that I heard. Because none of this, there's no growth without action. Okay? Because we can all be intellectuals, but intellectuals don't mean that we have a toolkit like in this book. All right, so that's your second number. Third number, emotional. I love Dr. Daniel Goleman. He's written a lot on emotional quotients, emotional intelligence. But I break it down really easily. One is, how well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? You ever been hangry, right? A little hungry, a little angry, right? Can you control it? How about this time of year? You know, Christmas is supposed to be a time of year where we're lighthearted and, you know, we're all kind of, you know, joyous. And then you stand in line and you fight for the same toy and you got to wait and can't find a place to park. You able to control your emotions there? Yeah. So how well are you doing that part? And then the second part is, how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of other people? Here's the thing. In this book, he talks about empathy. And I thought, you know, we talk about empathy a lot, but the key to empathy is having an emotional vocabulary that is big enough that what we can do is we can actually tap into and understand where another human being is coming from. When we can do that, we can change things. That's the point that he's making here. So on a scale 1 to 10, how do you think you're doing there? And then finally, the fourth area, the spiritual area. I know some of you say, I'm not spiritual. We're all spiritual. We all are. You move the physical, mental, emotional. What do you got left? You got a spiritual thing. We connect on a spiritual level. The fact of the matter is we all live by faith. That's a spiritual concept. If you drank your coffee this morning believing it wasn't poisonous, you pushed the button on your car believing it would start. You saw the crosswalk, it said walk. You believed that you could walk across that crosswalk without getting hit by a car. You made plans for your future believing that they're going to happen even though they haven't happened yet. That's all faith. It's a spiritual concept. And at the same time, we can find a sense of peace and joy in the midst of chaos, right? How do you do that? Is it God? Is it nature? Is it something else, right? And does it work for you? And then if not, what do you got to do to change it? So those 4 areas are like the air in the tires of your car. If one of the tires are too low or too flat, what happens? Hard to steer. And if all 4 tires are too low, what happens? Well, eventually over time, you're going to ruin the car. So we want to bring our tires up to the right height. And then speaking of somebody who does that, his name is Jurriaan Kamer, and he's a Dutch organizational change expert focusing on applying modern methods to unblock organizations and improve their outcomes. He helps leaders make more impact by eliminating ineffective strategy, pointless meetings, boy, do we need that, bureaucratic structures, and slow decision-making. Boy, do we need more of speed in decision-making. He's been in and around the most radical and adaptive organizations globally, including ones without managers and high levels of autonomy. Over the last decade, Jurriaan has worked as a speaker, author, and consultant. He co-founded Unblock, a modern management consultancy that works with leaders worldwide. His latest book is right here with us. It's called Unblock, Clear the Way for Results and Develop a Thriving Organization. It is a practical guide for leaders who want an organization with more ownership, faster decisions, fewer meetings, less bureaucracy, and that lead to significant better outcomes. Who doesn't want all of that? Of course we do. So it is my pleasure to welcome to A New Direction for the first time, Jurriaan Kamer. Welcome to A New Direction, friend.
Thank you, Jay. So glad to be here.
So let's dig right into the book. Fact of the matter is there's so much we could do. But there's one piece I do want to get out of the way first, because I think it falls in line with these 6 elements. And you talk about this as I think it's kind of foundational. It's called aligned autonomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it would be really, really important for us to start there before we move on to those 6, because I believe these 6 elements build off of that. So what is aligned autonomy and how do we get there?
Yeah, so I've been studying some of the most innovative and fast-moving organizations in the world, and also experimented with a lot of modern work practices. And over time, I realized that there's a pattern that they all follow, and that is aligned autonomy. That means that let's unpack it. There's two scales. First one is autonomy, right? So we want to create organizations where the people we hired that are on our payroll, the professionals, the talented people, they can decide for the most part how they do their work and what they do. We want to create, if you want to be fast as an organization, you want to create an environment where people can self-direct and don't need to be micromanaged or ask for permission for everything. That is autonomy. Alignment is also important, because if you have a lot of alignment, but not if you have a lot of autonomy and not a lot of alignment, you don't create the beautiful things that we can create as groups of humans. You want everything to add up to something bigger, and you want everyone to be working on the strategic goals of your business. So, and sometimes we see that as a either or skill. Like you can either have a lot of alignment but less autonomy, or vice versa. But I've seen organizations that have both, where teams have a high level of decision-making rights. They can decide themselves what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and also they do everything they do contributes to the higher level strategic goals of the organization. And if you have that, people can go fast, and people can learn quickly, and people can self-direct.
This idea of aligned autonomy, which by the way I think is a beautiful phrase, by the way, that I don't know if you have a trademark or if it's new. I've not run across it in the 7 years I've done this book, done these books, but I love aligned autonomy, because you're absolutely right. Both have to be in place. Is there a difference that you see in terms of the corporate versus the smaller business or does this and all these elements apply across the board, regardless of the size?
No, they apply everywhere. So at first sight, if you look at the title of the book, "Unblock," it might imply that it's only applicable if your organization is blocked, and you think of big, slow bureaucracies. But the fact of the matter is that if you have a smaller organization, it can also be blocked, and sometimes it's not because of an excess in process, but maybe a lack of clarity, a lack of agreements on how decisions are made. So it's quite chaotic. And and I think it's important to have aligned autonomy in all sorts of organizations, for sure.
Um, One of the things I did, I don't know if it's fair. You can correct me, please. I don't know if it's fair to you or not, but I kind of thought about it like a clogged drain.
Yeah.
Actually, like kind of like several clogged drains. It may not be 100% clogged, but it can be mostly clogged or a little clogged. So the water flow doesn't flow as well and things can get stopped up, or you could have a slow sink. And I kind of, when I read through these 6 elements, I kind of was like, okay, well, it doesn't mean that your strategy is completely bad, but there's areas within the strategy that could be improved to speed it up, right? Does that a fair analogy?
Yeah, it's like the pipes. If the pipes in the organizational system, if they're not flowing well, you don't create the customer value that you want to create, right?
Okay, so we're going to be the roto-rooter of these pipes is what we're going to do with this, but I think it's fun. I'm just going to throw out the 6 elements. We're going to kind of jump all over the place a little bit, but strategy, steering, decisions, ownership, teamwork, and meetings, right? And I know that there are going to be people chomping at the bit, who are going to want to talk about ownership and meetings. We're going to talk about this for sure. You say that we could go to any section of this book and we could choose any one of them, but is this a particular order as well, or it doesn't? Is the order not as relevant?
Yeah, it is relevant, because the book promises leaders to give them tools to achieve their strategic goals, to be better at strategy execution. And that's why it starts with strategy, because often we think that the organization is hindering the strategy from coming to life, but the fact of the matter is the strategy itself is often not good enough. So that's why I start with strategy. Also, honestly, I put meetings to the end, and that's because I got a lot of feedback from people that are like, yeah, I know. I'm suffering from meeting overload. I don't like my meetings, but I'm also sick of reading about it. So don't put it somewhere in front of the book. Put it at the end, because I might not be able to overcome that chapter if I start reading it earlier.
Yeah, well, right, because I think we're all guilty of we either feel like we have too many meetings, which you talk about in the book, but then the other thing you talk about is they're just done so badly, and we hear it all the time on meetings, and we read about it a lot. And I think that's fair. And I'm going to keep it to the end too.
Okay, let's do that.
We're going to keep it to the end too, because I don't want people to be turned off by that. But I told you before what my plan was, but I'm going to alter it just a little bit, because because I'm looking at, in the book, you kind of had this chart with strategy, steering, and then you had decisions and meetings every day. Yeah. And then you go down to ownership and then teamwork. So maybe what we do is we do a quick, and then we'll focus on some of them more as we go along. So let's start with strategy. And so I know that one of the things you want to create alignment with strategic intent. So where do we find that we're mostly blocked on strategy?
Yeah, often the strategy is not sharp enough. I don't know if sharp is the right term, but a strategy needs to do 2 things. First of all, it needs to enable you to win at a certain goal in a certain marketplace that you choose to win, that you choose to try to win in. And the second thing is it needs to create focus and alignment in the organization. So we've all seen those fluffy mission statements that are like, we want to be the number one in a market and create value for customers and shareholders, blah, 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 right? And those things hang on the wall, but they do absolutely nothing, right? They do neither of those objectives, right? They don't make any choices about how you're going to overcome the obstacles that you have, and how you're going to leverage the assets and the unfair advantages that you have to be really good in a certain place. So so maybe you want to be number one, but that's not a strategy. That's just some faraway vision. The strategy could be like, you know what, we're going to create this type of product because we've learned something about the market, and because we believe the puck is going to go that place and want to steer toward the puck where it's going. So it's almost like a plan of how you're going to be really good. And then the second thing, strategic intent, is all about writing it down in a way that it's so clear and so concrete that if somebody new would join your team or organization and they would read that strategy statement, they're like, oh, good, I kind of understand what that means, and I understand what that means for my day-to-day job. And a lot of strategies fail that test. A lot of strategies are just like, PowerPoint decks built in stuffy meeting rooms, and everybody, including legal and the communications department, had to agree. So it becomes this very average, mediocre thing that means nothing, right? So yeah, start there. The third thing that I didn't mention yet is that the strategy is all about making choices. So I spend a lot of time explaining how you can write down strategic trade-offs. So it's super clear what you're going to sacrifice, in what you're willing to sacrifice in order to achieve your goal. Because we cannot have it all, not all at the time.
Okay, so I just want people to understand that when Jurriaan introduces any one of these elements within the book, what he has practices within them. I want people to understand. And then there's also a summary, by the way, that he gives you at the end of it, that is actually extraordinarily awesome when he starts talking about it. Here's the thing about strategy. It has been well said over and over again for I don't know how many decades that culture eats strategy for breakfast. We've all heard that. But the way you're defining strategy to me is that it's part of culture, or culture is part of the strategy. It's not two separate things. It's actually one thing. Is that an accurate assumption?
I would say there's something in the middle that creates culture. Culture is, you can describe culture as the collective behavior of an organizational system, is the way that things happen and don't happen. And you can change the culture, and especially around strategy execution, you can change how behavior is shaped by adopting these kinds of practices, where you're going to write it down. You don't create an annual goal, but you create a 2 to 3 year goal. You're going to write it down in a specific way. You're going to ask teams, you're going to invite teams to self-align towards the strategy. Those are all like changing how we do work so that the right behavior happens, and that over time changes the culture.
You mentioned that we got to have a strategy that helps us win. How are you ultimately defining a strategy that helps us win? Is that an everyday win? Is that we're gonna win because we're more profitable? How are you defining that? Okay, this is a strategy that helps us win, or is that just all part of it, maybe too?
Well, what winning means is different for every company. Often it is about creating shareholder value and revenue, but more importantly, you have a certain purpose for creating that business, right? You talked about spirituality in the past in the introduction. It's like, why do we exist? What good do we want to do in the world, and why would customers care about paying us? So you have an identity, the purpose of the organization, but then how are you going to achieve that in the long run? That might mean that for the next 2 to 3 years, you really need to jump on, I don't know, the AI train, right? You have to adopt AI in a way because that's the thing right now. Or maybe it means you have to grow your business globally, because if you don't do that, maybe you're not going to be relevant anymore. Winner takes all. So there might be different challenges that you have in your market and in your situation. So strategy is all about acknowledging what are the actual challenges that we see, obstacles, and also what capabilities do we uniquely have that we can leverage to be successful. And success can mean anything, depending on your definition and your market.
His name is Jurriaan Kamer. The book is entitled Unblock, a practical guide for leaders, clear the way for results, develop a thriving organization. Absolutely fantastic. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, our sponsors, Linda Craft Team Realtors is one of them. She's a longtime sponsor. Let me just say something about them. They help people transition in life, and they go, yeah, well, they do real estate. How's that possible? Well, it's because every place you've ever lived has been a life transition. And you know what? She knows how to take the stress out of that part. So listen, if you're ready to sell your house, buy your house, you want to reduce some stress, you want to help get that transition going, go to lindacraft.com. It's really that easy. LINDACRAFT.com. And I also, Zoundy is one of our new sponsors. Zoundy is the ultimate game changer for authors, publishers, and professionals in the audio book space. It's with its cutting edge marketing customization and specialized marketing tools. Zoundy helps you maximize your audiobooks reach and revenue. I use it, folks. It is so good. Listen, it will target the traditional sales channels, generate reviews. It is a way for me to actually be in contact with the people who download my book. I mean, it is awesome that I can actually, I know if you've downloaded book, I know. So listen, if you want to if you've written a book, you haven't done the Audible yet, check out Zoundy.com, Zoundy.com. Now listen, if you are listening to my voice and you want to do this, I got a special offer for you. Just go to Zoundy.com/J, that's JAY, and then use the promo code J25. That's JAY25. Zoundy.com/J, special code J25, and you'll get a discount if you're going to join Zoundy. I'm telling you, it's worth it. I love it. I think you will too. And we're back here on A New Direction with Jurriaan Kamer, his book, latest effort, Unblock, Clear the Way for Results and Develop a Thriving Organization. Absolutely fantastic. I enjoy the book so much. I want to finish off strategy here real quick, Jurriaan. It's even overs, which I think is an interesting concept, because it's one, again, I have not thought about much. But we're going to have to make some tough choices, and you call them even overs. So help us understand the even over statement, what that is.
Yeah, an even over statement is a way to make your trade-offs explicit, to write them down in a very simple way, so it can serve as a heuristic in further decision making. So, for example, if you are Amazon, imagine you're Jeff Bezos, right? Wouldn't that be great? For Amazon became really big by making the trade-off of market share even over margin for a long time. So they didn't care much about how much margin they were making on their products. They just created a lot of volume and trying to capture as much as the market as possible, and kept their margins very thin. And that made them super big super quickly. So that is a strategy statement that they have been using. Another example is experience of being a local even over predictable hospitality, which is an even over statement that made Airbnb famous. Right, so hotels are predictable hospitality. That's great, but if you want to have an experience of being a local, then you pick an Airbnb. So this is just an example of defining a brand, but you can also use them for your team. So, for example, we have at our company we have a trade-off of explicit appreciation even over implicit appreciation. Is an even over statement that we recently adopted, which is all about how we want to relate to each other. And a good even over statement has two positive things on either side. So it should be reversible and still make sense. So for software development department, you can say quality even over volume. You cannot do quality even over bad quality, right? That doesn't work. Then it's not a trade-off. So yeah, it allows you to express your trade-offs, make it explicit, and decide intentionally what you're going to prioritize.
You talk about in strategy here, let people align themselves to the strategy. I think there's going to be many people, especially here in the US, that will go, Jurriaan, that's a risk, man. That's a little bit of a risk. You don't see it so much as a risk. Talk about letting people align themselves to the strategy and how that can work.
Yeah, so the idea is that when you have a strategic intent, when you say like, well, in the next 2 years, we're going to fully invest on, I don't know, our mobile platform or whatever that is, then you can go to your teams and instead of saying like, this is what we're going to do, you ask them, hey, you know what, your your part in this. You're the finance team. What does that mean for the finance team?
Mhm.
Oh wow! And you ask them and invite them to think about what that means for them, rather than pushing the goals and the strategies top down. So the chapter is called "Don't Cascade Your Strategy, but Integrate Your Strategy," right? So we're all about management cascades, right? The top of the organization, they decide on the goals and they push it down and they push it down, and then everybody is aligned. At least we think they're all aligned, but that's a myth. The fact of the matter is, alignment only happens if people are able to choose for themselves what they want to contribute to that overarching goal. And you might say, like, well, maybe they're going to choose the wrong things, right? And that's okay. I think what you should do then is you counterbalance that risk with transparency. You invite people to make their ideas of what they're going to do to achieve your strategy transparent. And then if you see strange deviations or unexpected things, you go and talk to them and try to understand first, like, why do you think this? And in it, there's feedback for you as well. Like, apparently people didn't understand when I said the mobile platform, what that meant for everyone. So I have to go back and revise the strategy. So it's all about creating feedback loops between every layer in the organization rather than the top just pushing it down.
This is an excellent chapter. I just thought it was. I think it's just a refreshing way to look at strategy and for us to build it. I want to move to steering real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that people understand when you say steering what they mean. Help them understand what you mean by steering.
Yeah, steering. The chapter on steering contains some alternative approaches to the typical goal planning cycles that we have in companies, like the annual plan that we have to submit. And I start the chapter with a quote by Mike Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. I always love them.
So true, by the way.
Yeah, and yeah, we shouldn't talk about Mike too much now, but it's all that recent fight. But the thing is that we over-index on trying to plan out our path towards our goal. We spend an enormous amount of time analyzing all the possible steps that we need to achieve to get something, and we underestimate how much we need to change along the way. So instead of assuming we can control reality and completely plan and predict towards it, I propose that companies adopt a way of steering that is very iterative, where it's like, we're going to plan really short term and really long term. That's the strategic intent, but we're not going to plan anything in between. So in that chapter, I talk a lot about creating a rhythm of progress with 90-day outcomes. So every 90 days, we're going to figure out what we're going to do next in the next 90 days. And we're going to build on our learnings from last quarter to go further. And the second thing is steering metrics. So following the leading indicators that will over time create success for us, and constantly changing those metrics, so we're following the right things while we are learning.
You talk about a rhythm of progress
Mm-hmm.
with 90-day outcomes, which we're talking quarterly here.
Yeah.
What do you first of all, you use rhythm of progress,
Mm-hmm.
I think, intentionally here.
Yeah.
What are you trying to really accomplish through this rhythm of progress in this quarterly?
Yeah.
Help us understand that outcome.
Yeah, the idea is that you don't do an annual plan, but you build in ceremonies, rituals, meetings, whatever you want to call them, moments of communication with each other, where you intentionally at the end of the quarter sit down and say, you know what happened? What did we plan to do this quarter? All right, okay. What happened? What worked well? What didn't work well? You reflect on that, and then you go, okay. So what does that mean for our next quarter? What are the outcomes, not the outputs, but the outcomes that we want to realize in order for us to achieve our strategic intent in a couple of years out? And that's a rhythm. It's like a heartbeat that drives the organization forward, beat after beat after beat, and it's a learning rhythm, basically.
I just found that I think what happens is we do things annually,
Mm-hmm.
too frequently,
A lot, yeah.
and So this 90-day rhythm, I think, just keeps everybody on track and keeps everybody moving, and the progress just keeps going. I think much
Yeah.
easier if you do it quarterly. I so agree with you here.
Yeah.
Section 3 is called decisions, unblocking decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We all know paralysis by analysis,
Yeah.
and I don't think there's a business probably listening to our voices right now that goes, man, our decision making process is so slow. It just gets bogged down. I know corporations, I know you've been in them too, where they've gotten so big that nothing gets really done.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I was just with one of my coaching clients, who owns a cybersecurity company, and he was saying to me, the problem with the larger that you become, the less innovation you have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he said, we're small enough where we can be innovative,
Mm-hmm.
right? But he said, you get to a point where you're so big, you just buy your innovation. You don't actually
Mm-hmm.
create it in-house.
Right.
And I thought that was an interesting, because he said nobody can make a decision because nothing can get done. And I thought that was so interesting. How do we help people unblock their decisions or the decision-making process?
Yeah, and to respond to that first, Jay, I think it should be the opposite. Like if you have a lot of people, you should be able to do a lot of things.
Right. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a bit counterintuitive. Yeah, the big part of becoming bigger is that you involve more and more people in your decision making.
Right.
And if you don't maintain the pipes there, if you don't go and say, you know what, we have to rebuild this part because it doesn't work anymore, it grows into a jungle, and nobody knows exactly who owns what. We all think we need to involve everyone to get a decision, and then that means we're stuck in meetings all day. So there's a couple things there. So one thing is definitely about defining who owns what decision. But in that chapter, I also talk a lot about getting more comfortable with less perfect information,
Right.
and acknowledging that some decisions are simply reversible.
Right.
So you can make a decision, and you can, if it doesn't work out, you can quickly make another one. And the consequences of making the wrong choice are very low. So we can get out of our own way and stop discussing the same decision week after week without doing anything.
That's such an interesting concept. I've been interviewed generals on the show. One in particular, General John Gronsky, and he talked about that in the military they learn that you have to learn how to be comfortable with 80% information.
Right. Yeah. That's it.
Right.
Yeah. Because if you're going to strive for 100%, you might not ever get that 100%. And the cost of delaying the decision, basically the cost of dragging your feet, is what I sometimes call it, is actually much higher than potentially making the wrong choice.
Right. I also interviewed Kara Golden, who owns Hint Water Company, which is the single largest privately owned beverage company in the U.S. And she owns it out of San Francisco, and it's flavored water. And she uses a phrase, says that sometimes you just have to build the plane while it's in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I think we're so uncomfortable with that, Jurriaan.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're just so uncomfortable with going, what do you mean I launched a plane without wings? Yeah, well, sometimes you have to. You got to build a wing while you're going.
Yeah. And you have to put something out there in order for you to know if it works or not, right? So imagine you want to build the number one mobile app. Well, you can try to plan your way into that. But the problem space is complex. You don't know exactly what clients are going to, or like users actually like. You don't know what they value. You don't know precisely what they're going to resonate with. So you must just put something out there, get feedback, learn from it, and then make your next decision, rather than trying to make the perfect plan up front.
Well, and then the other problem is, Jurriaan, is that you'll get surpassed if you're waiting for perfection.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Your competition is going to jump ahead. Those people who are willing to take that risk on less information are going to ultimately beat you. You're waiting for perfection.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your competition is surpassing you with half the information.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in the book I found, for the research of the book, I found a quote actually from 1100 or like around 1200. Maimonides, a rabbi and
Oh,
philosopher,
yeah.
and he said, "The risk of a wrong decision is preferable to the terror of indecision."
Yes.
So it's funny. It's been an old problem. It's 1,000 years ago. They already identified this.
I thought it was interesting that you picked up Maimonides as doing it in that, because of course I've heard that before on numerous occasions. So I was like going, oh, you know what? How fitting is this?
Yeah.
You pull into this, and I think it's a nice little segue. James Clear, Atomic Habits
Yeah.
in Our Decisions, and you taught. It's a subtitle here: Hats, Haircuts, and Tattoos.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love that little analogy. I don't know how much you liked it, but I like it a lot.
Oh yeah, I love it.
So let's talk about that, because I think this might be enlightening for the listener, how our decisions are hats, haircuts, and tattoos.
Yeah. Yeah. So James wrote a blog post about this, and he says most decisions are like hats,
Mhm.
meaning you can buy one, and if you don't like it, you can either buy a new one or bring it back and get your money back.
Mhm.
So that's a very highly reversible decision with not a lot of consequence.
Mhm.
The middle category is haircuts. So there was a time in my life where I had hair. So you would go to a barber. Yeah, it's a long time ago. Would go to a barber, and maybe you get a haircut that you don't like. Maybe you get a bad hair day, right? Or like a bad haircut, and you're like pretty frustrated and maybe a bit ashamed. But usually within 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, it starts growing back, and you might feel embarrassed, but you don't have to live with the consequences forever. And there's a very small percentage of decisions that are like tattoos,
Right.
meaning that if you get a tattoo, it's not easily reversed. It's not easy to remove. You can remove it technically, but it's going to be painful and costly as well, and you might still see some stain of it. So for tattoos, we need to be careful. We need to slow down and really think about the consequences of that decision. For haircuts and hats, let's go and make more of them. Let's try more stuff and go forward.
I think the mistake that we make is we believe everything is a tattoo,
That's the problem. Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Is
we
that
handle everything as if it's a tattoo, and we have to
right?
distinguish the types of decisions.
Right. Because I don't know. I'm a psychological professional, and I'm trying to think of where that comes from. But I think sometimes we are so prevention mindseted, meaning
Yeah.
that we have this prevention mindset that we don't want to lose what we have.
Right.
So we have this fear of taking this risk, and then we believe everything is, and then we have catastrophic thinking, right? Where
Yep.
if what we do is not right, then it's a bigger catastrophe than it really is. And it keeps us from taking those risks, which are appropriate, because most things we can recover from. Most things,
Yeah.
if not all of them. I know maybe there's some things we can't, but
Yeah.
most everything we can. And then you bring up in one of the practices about that we have to have, everybody has to have a range of tolerance.
Yeah.
How do we balance this? Because I found this a little bit of a conundrum, where we have people who maybe are not tolerant of risk, and you have people who are tolerant of risk,
Hmm.
and yet we know we got to move forward. How do we make that
Yeah.
work, so that it works well in the organization?
Yeah. So this part is about getting out of the trap of consensus, where we're trying to get everyone to agree before we move forward. And the way to get out of that is to go for consent rather than consensus.
Mm.
And to put that into practice, instead of asking in a decision-making process, you stop asking, do we all agree? And is this the right choice? Instead, you ask, is this good enough for now, safe enough to try?
Mm.
And that completely changes the dynamic by just asking a different question in your process. It's true that people will have different risk appetite for that. And somebody might say it's not safe to try. It's going to be catastrophic. Someone else might say it is safe to try. But these group type decisions, they happen in contact with each other. You can clarify what the risk is. You can figure out ways to make the decision and plan for mitigate some of the risks that are involved. So that, or you can make it smaller. You make your first step a bit smaller, or you do it and then you evaluate it after a few weeks instead of deciding it forever. This question really drives the right conversation of, is it safe to try? And we talk about what that means. And there's multiple ways to clarify the actual risk. But by using this phrase, it kind of biases you towards forward momentum.
That's awesome. His name is Jurriaan Kamer. The book, Unblock, Clear the Way for Results and Develop a Thriving Organization, a practical guide for leaders. It's right here.
Mhm.
You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, Linda Craft Team Realtors, let me just talk about their website, lindacraft.com. I think it is the most comprehensive real estate website that is out there in the market today. Check it out. It's really simple. lindacraft.com. It's not just listings, and it's also like child psychologist wrote how to move with children, veterinarian wrote how to move with a dog or your pets, right? It's just filled with all sorts of useful information, vendors that they vetted over the course of 40 years that they rely on, you can rely on too. Check them out. It's lindacraft.com, lindacraft.com. And also check out Zoundy. Authors, publishers, listen to me. Hear me talk, right? As I stand. Zoundy.com, Zoundy.com. I use it. It's fantastic. If you're trying to, if you have an audiobook or you want to do an audiobook, sign up with Zoundy, get your audiobook out there, and have the ability to be in contact with everyone who's ever downloaded your book. It's so cool. Let's say you're speaking, like let's say Jurriaan's out there speaking somewhere and he's got 500 people he's in front of. Do you know what he could do? If he was with Zoundy, he could actually gift 500 people without any cost to him. Right? And then they download the book before he does a speaking engagement. And then what happens is he's now in contact with 500 people. How awesome would that be for you as an author? It's so awesome. It really is. So listen, there's a special that Zoundy has given to me. It's zoundy.com/J. Use the code JAY25. That's right. It's zoundy.com, JAY, and then use the code JAY25 for your discount. I'm telling you, it is worth it. Check it out. Authors, publishers, zoundy.com, ZOUNDY.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Jurriaan Kamer, the book Unblock. Are you enjoying this at all, Jurriaan? Because I'm enjoying this.
I am, and I also know where to go if I ever want to buy a house in the US or get my audiobook published. No, just that I'm definitely going to check out Zoundy. I'm in the middle of finishing the audiobook, so it's interesting. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, check it out. Yeah, I really do think the people at Zoundy have done a really great job. I really like it personally with my books, so I really do it. We're getting into part that people are going to chomp at the bit for. I know they've been waiting for it. Ownership.
Mm-hmm.
There is a saying out there that nobody is as invested in your company as you are as the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And we all want our people to take ownership. And it seems like it's a difficult thing to do. For the love of all sanity of CEOs and managers everywhere, Jurriaan, help our people take more ownership, please.
Yeah, it's a real big problem. It's one of the biggest complaints when I work with leaders in my client organizations. Funny enough, the people on the ground don't experience this tension. It's definitely mostly the people at the top that are like impatient and frustrated, and they have the right to have that. And the thing though that I believe that we should look at it differently is, ownership is not something you can force upon someone. It has to be taken, and that means that you have to create the conditions so that people want and can take ownership. And there's a lot of things that you can do as a leader to either build or destroy those conditions. So in the book, I talk a lot about creating the conditions for it. One of it is letting people choose what to contribute. So if you want to have people being emotionally engaged and emotionally invested in the work they do, and care about the work they do, the best thing you can do is let them choose what and how they want to contribute to your success, and let them pick something, and let them propose something that they think is valuable for business, that they are energized to do, and give them the space to do it. And again, it goes back to the self-alignment. So it might feel scary, like what if people are going to propose things that are stupid, or what I think, what is it not aligned with my plans? Well, if it's not aligned with your plans, you need to do more work to create that strategic awareness,
Right.
because people in the end, they want to do the right thing, you know.
Right.
And the thing actually that destroys ownership and engagement is them bumping into a problem that they face every day, and they bring it up to the leader and the manager, and it's not being dealt with, and they're like, come on, I would love to solve this problem, but just let me do it, or give me the time and resources to actually take a stab at this. So the book actually describes a few very progressive organizations that have marketplaces with missions, mission-based teams. Just the other day, I did a LinkedIn Live with somebody who worked at Roche, the pharmaceutical company. They are, they have like over 100,000 people in literally every country in the world. In every country, they have a country organization with their own CEO and their own management team and their own people. But they basically do the same thing in every country, right? These are the go-to market teams that are trying to bring medicine to healthcare professionals and to improve patients' lives. And what they did on top of the traditional organizational structure, which is still pretty hierarchical, is like they opened up an opportunity marketplace. So if you see a valuable problem that people face every day, the doctor of a certain eye medicine is running into this problem every day, and you're trying to solve this in the small country of the Netherlands. You want to tap into the wisdom of the whole network globally. So literally everyone can put a one-page document on that opportunity marketplace. Like, hey, you know what? I think it's valuable for our patients and for our company if we solve this problem. Who wants to join me in that mission? And people can volunteer to join that team. Then if the team has grown to 5 to 7 or 8 people, they're just going to work on that for 20 or 30% of their time for a year or longer, until they are creating positive outcomes. And you can imagine that part of their business, that part of their job is now going to be extremely energizing, and they take full ownership over it. There's no manager that is going to check. There's nobody they're reporting to. They're just going to create value because they believe that they can do something great for their patients and customers.
How does first of all, you brought about this? I think you brought this research out, and I think it was from Harvard University, about boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And make boundaries explicit to set people free.
Yeah.
Which that research study was pretty cool with the kids and the
Yeah.
right? It was a pretty cool study. How does making boundaries connect to ownership?
Yeah, the thing is with ownership is, if you don't know what is okay and what is not okay, you're gonna do one of two things. You can either do stuff, you can take initiative and make that customer call, or you launch a new product or whatever you think you can do, and then you get a slap on the wrist because you crossed this invisible boundary that apparently was there. Imagine the next time you have a great idea, you're not going to take that initiative because you're afraid of getting slapped on the wrist.
Right.
So when the boundary is explicit, when leaders say, you know what, anything above 10,000K investment, you have to run through me. But everything below that, go knock yourself out. We can take small informed risks, and I trust you to do the right thing, as long as it's within these either financial boundaries or regulatory boundaries or product boundaries, whatever they are. So to make those explicit, that helps. The other thing that people do if the boundaries are not explicit is people are paralyzed, and they just go and ask for permission for everything they do.
Right.
And that obviously frustrates the hell out of our leaders. But they have to realize that they are reinforcing this cycle by constantly falling into the trap of giving permission when somebody asks for it. And that reinforces this loop of giving permission and asking for permission. So you have to break through that and break free of that by setting boundaries, working on the system instead of being in the system yourself every day, and make sure that people know what they may do and where they can take ownership if they want to.
There's so much that we could talk about on ownership. I feel like we got to move on though to the next piece of it, and that is the teamwork piece. Um, you talk about 5 things in teamwork, the
Mm-hmm.
5 dynamics of great teams: psychological safety, dependability, structure, clarity, meaning, and impact. I think we talk a lot about psychological safety. I feel like I feel there's so many books written on psychological safety. I think as leaders, we understand that we got to have a psychological safe place that people can be free to say what they want to be able to
Mm-hmm.
say. And I think it actually contributes to ownership, that
Yeah.
if people have the ability to feel free, that they can say what they need to say without repercussion. I think that's the ownership piece of it.
Yeah.
The last 4 pieces, though: dependability, structure, and clarity, meaning, and impact.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 4, after psychological safety, which one or 2 of those stands out to you that goes, yeah, we got to do better here?
Yeah, I think dependability is important, meaning that I psychological safety is important, but it's also like I trust that I can depend on my coworkers, right? People take their responsibility seriously. We believe that we're going to do what we say. And I offer a few ways of improving that part. One of them is personal user manuals,
Yes.
where you're going to invite the team to write down like a how to work with me manual. Like, I'm Jurriaan. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, right? I put the bar very high for myself. That means I can sometimes be super annoying when I see work of others. You will find it great, and I'm just going to. That's a pitfall. I'm working on that pitfall, and you write that down so that people know that of you, right? You accelerate the learning curves of the whole team if you are able to talk about your challenges and how people can help you out with those, and how to best communicate and work with you, and what you really appreciate in your coworkers. And that increases dependability. And it's something that is often missed, but that also goes for psychological safety. We talk a lot about it, but apart from maybe team building and sitting down, I mean, there's practices that you can do to continuously build that,
Right.
and those things are often not done intentionally.
Yeah. You talk in here, this chapter, about the retrospective. The military people, the military people, like the Navy SEALs people and the Delta Force people that I've interviewed, and even general that I've interviewed here on the show, they call it an AAR, an after action review. It's the same 3 questions: what went right, what went wrong, what could we do better?
Yep.
It's something that I have found in my practice as a coach with businesses. They don't do very often.
No.
And yet it's a very simple I can do this with 14-year-old hockey players, by the way.
Yeah.
And it works.
It works really well.
Really, I do it with 14-year-old 14, 16, 19-year-old hockey players. I do it with, and can I tell you something? That they get it.
Yeah.
And it really works well.
Yeah.
I don't know why we don't do it.
Well, I have a theory. Have a theory, but it's not that we don't get it. If kids get it, adults will get it too. The challenge is that we feel the pressure of always executing. We feel a constant urgency of moving forward. So there's a culture of, if we look at the past, it is not productive. It's not driving us. It doesn't deliver any additional work, right? But that's obviously a fallacy, right? You have to.
Right.
The only way to become smarter and stronger and better at your work is to actually slow down, so you can then accelerate later. It's the only way to learn.
I agree. You've been great. We've done an hour. It's gone very, very fast. I don't know if it has for you, but it has for me.
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much coming on the show all the way 7 hours ahead. I know that it's late. The kids are in bed, and so I appreciate you coming on. Tell people how they can get a hold of you if they want more information, hire you, whatever they want to do. Tell them where they can go.
Yeah. So we are at www.unblocked.works. That's our consultancy. You'll find the book on Amazon or on unblockbook.net. And I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you want to reach out or follow me, just go there and click the button.
He also has a really cool website called Jurriaan Kamer. And I know for those of you who are wondering how to spell it, it's JURRIAANKAMER. I'm going to have all these links attached to the blog post to this show. So you'll be able to find them and you can get in contact with them. Jurriaan, thank you so much. Stay with me, will you please, as we close the show. Folks, it's the show, you know what I say to you every week. You're in control of three things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. I know that life can be difficult, it can be challenging, but the fact of the matter is your attitude is under your control. You're 100% responsible for how you want to respond, and that includes your attitude. Your effort is tied to your excellence. How excellent will you choose to be today? That is up to you. And as we've said, you know what? We all get punched in the gut or punched in the face, and we get knocked down. It's up to you to get back up again, though. Do you want to know why? You should, because you're worth it, and I believe in you. And we'll be back next week with another great guest, another great book. That means it's automatically another great show. As I say to you all over, you've had a lot of choices. You chose us. Thank you for doing that. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube and a 5-star review wherever you've listened to the show. We appreciate you so much. And as I say to you all over the world, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.